To do in this video is think about multiplying or strategies for multiplying numbers that are expressed in terms of hundreds or thousands or tens. And so we see an example right over here. We have 800 times 400. Now, like always, I encourage you to pause this video and see if you can work this out on your own. Now let's work this through together. And I'm going to work it out in a way that at least my head likes to tackle it. And once you get enough practice, you might even be able to do these types of multiplication problems without even needing to use paper. So the key realization here is to say, well, look, this is 8 hundreds. So that's the same thing as 8 times 100. And this over here is 4 hundreds. So this is 4 times 100. And so it's 8 times 100 times 4 times 100. And if you're multiplying a bunch of numbers like this, you can switch the order in which you're doing the multiplication. So you can view this as 8 times 4, 8 times 4 times 100 times 100 times 100 times 100 times 100. Now, why is this easier? Well, what is 8 times 4 going to be? Well, 8 times 4, if we know our times tables, is 32. And so it's going to be 32 times, what's 100 times 100 going to be? Now, there's multiple ways that you could think about this, and I want you to really think it through, but we'll soon see that there's a fairly fast way of making sure we got it right. But one way to think about it is, well, let me do it over here. 10 times 100 is equal to 1,000. And so 100 times 100 is going to be 10 times that, or it's going to be equal to 10,000. So this stuff right over here is equal to 10,000. Now you might notice something interesting here. I have 2 zeros and then another 2 zeros, so I have a total of 4 zeros, and then I have 4 zeros here. Because every time you multiply by 10, you're going to add another 0. So if you're multiplying by 100, you're going to add 2 zeros. If you're multiplying by 1,000, you're going to add 3 zeros. And you see that here. So you have 32 times 10,000, which is going to be what? Well, let's see. 32 times 1,000 would be 32,000. But this is 32 times 10,000. So it's going to be 320,000. Now you might already notice an interesting pattern here. 32 times 1 followed by 4 zeros is 32 followed by 4 zeros. This is 32 10,000s, which is 320,000. Now another way you could have thought about it is 8 times 4 gives us our 32. And then we have 2 zeros there, 2 zeros there for a total of 4 zeros. And we have our 4 zeros right over there. Now, I don't want you to just memorize that. It works because this is 8 hundreds times 4 hundreds. 8 times 4 gives us the 32. And then the 100 times the hundreds, that's where these 4 zeros come from. Let's do another example. So let me delete this. And let me get my pen back. So let's do 30 times 70. Let's do 30 times 700. Pause the video and see if you can figure this out. So we can do it like we did before. 30 is 3 times 10. 700, so times 700, which is 7 times 100. And so if you say 3 times 7 is going to be 21 times 10 times 100 is going to be 1,000. So what's 21 times 1,000? Well, that's going to be 21,000. Now, just like we saw before, once you get a hang of it, and I always want you to understand where it's coming from, 3 times 7 is the 21, and then you're going to multiply that times 10 and then 100. So you have 1, 2, 3 zeros, 1, 2, 3 zeros. Let's do one more of these. So let's say we wanted to multiply 2,000 times 8,000. Pause the video and see if you can figure out what this is. Maybe in your head. Try to do this one in your head. Or on paper. Don't feel bad if you need to use paper. That's always prudent. Well, you might get the hang of it now. You might be able to do this quite quickly. You might be able to say, hey, 2 times 8, well, that's going to be equal to 16. And then I have 3 plus 3 zeros. So that's going to be 6 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which gives me 16 million. And you would absolutely be correct. Now, I want to reinforce what you're doing when you're just counting zeros like that. What you're doing is you're saying, hey, this is the same thing as 2 times 1,000 times 8 times 1,000. 8 times 1,000. And then you're just changing the order of multiplication. You're saying, hey, let me multiply the 2 and the 8. You multiply the 2 times the 8, and you get 16. And then you multiply the times 1,000 times 1,000. So times 1,000 times 1,000. And 1,000 to thousands, that's 1 million. This is 1 million right over here. And notice, you see it there too. 1,000 times 1,000, you have 3 zeros, you get 6 zeros. 1,000 thousands is a million. 16 times a million is 16 million. So hopefully that helps and makes you a little bit more comfortable multiplying these numbers that are multiples of 10, 100, thousands, even millions.